Hi, this is Norm from Griz and Norm. So welcome back. What I want to do today is talk about sketching from imagination, at least from my perspective. What I want to try to do is to just go through, oh, imagine, I can't spell imagination. What I really want to try to do is to just go through a little bit what goes through my minds using no references and just trying to have fun while drawing and maybe what I'm attempting to do, but really it's more of a matter of like thinking about what what's interesting to me and how I approach just sketching from imagination. So this is it, sketching from animation with Norm. All right, so I'm going to select a tool or a brush that's really great for me right now, a charcoal pencil smooth from a set that I've bought recently from Lane.Draws, the charcoal master pack, which I found amazing. Follow him on Instagram, Lane.Draws. I believe his name is Lane Brown. Great, amazing artist. So these brushes are the closest thing for me to natural media that I use on naturally. I often draw on newsprint with um, Conte stick, so it has that same feel for me, at least in ProCreate, the closest thing. So I do like all the edges and the sort of fat side that you can now use in ProCreate with the Apple Pencil. So I draw a lot of profiles when I'm just starting out or not really thinking about anything. I'm just sort of going through motions, and somehow I tend to kind of find my own little, get back into my zone of comfort um, of little symbols or little shortcuts or ways, my own visual language, my own line language and shading language that I use kind of all the time in life drawing or storyboarding, gesture drawing. Um, so I feel like these two parts of my art are now finally sort of converging in ways that I like. I used to separate or not being able to really implement what I was learning in life drawing or gesture drawing with my, I guess, cartoon art or animation art. And I think more and more now that I've really sort of delved into it, uh, it it just spills in every now and then, but almost all the time now. Especially these days, I've been drawing a lot with Procreate and certain tools. Even before I was using Lane.Draws brush sets, I was using the Griz pencils that comes with, and a bunch of other things from a bunch of sets, brush sets that I've downloaded over the last few months and years. So yeah, I do a lot of profiles. I just find that there's so much to explore, and it's such a human thing to do. I feel like looking at faces and trying to push those faces in, at least for me, in cartoon shapes, and finding fun angles and pushing noses and brows and eyes and mouths. That's where our eyes look at anyways as human beings. So I feel like the profile is sort of the most fun thing to play with easily, at least for me, like on if I'm not thinking too much. Drawing a character from the front can be tricky because it's very easy to, especially if you're just drawing for fun, like to not make a character draw eyes at least be sort of wonky. But from a profile, you can't really mess it up. Um, and somehow, the more I draw even profiles, the more I feel my inspirations or my influences come through in the way I simplify or doodle. So let's just talk about it, get it out of the way. Because I feel like we, as artists, we all have our own, I guess, art language or line language or our own alphabet almost. But it all comes from others somehow. At least we're influenced by at least a few artists. For me, Bruce Timm is huge in my art education, or even before I was even interested in art. I was interested in stories and cartoons, and the 90s were ripe for that. So, I mean, Batman the Animated uh, series is probably, to me, the most important animated um, series ever created, and Bruce Timm's style and approach is all over it. And it's still in the way I draw. You know, the way he draws simplify arms and legs and faces and those sharp angles and um, really like simplifying the shapes almost in the face and the body of characters, especially superheroes, in such an iconic, graphic, simple way. Even the way he draws women and those sort of heart-shaped jaws um, or lower mouth. It's all over the place, and I have my own spin on it. Like that will come with maybe my other influences, but definitely Bruce Timm and everything he's ever drawn, and but especially the early Batman season 1 to 4, especially I would say for me, were were huge. Especially I would say the redesign that happened. I can't remember if it was season 3 or 4, but there was sort of a streamlining of the characters from the first few seasons at some point into something even more graphic, and I just fell in love with that. Especially the book that came. I can't even remember what it was named, but I guess the art of Batman Animated was such an inspiration for years, even before I decided to go into animation. Next up is, I mean, just oh yeah, still Bruce Timm, but let's just talk about just how. I mean, I can still draw it. Like I had a few figures from the show, Batman Animated or Justice League or anything that came afterwards with Bruce's style. Um, but I would say, especially like some of the figures that I could just turn around, like the Flash and Batman and Wonder Woman and all these characters had such iconic shapes that were easy to turn around and even extended. Like I drew like that extended lower leg or tibia and slightly bigger feet, especially for the Flash. That was just something that just grabbed me, and I feel even if I'm not thinking about it, it comes through my art. That simplification and that sense of just simplicity, energy. Um, it just works. I feel like that series and Bruce Timm especially has unlocked something that's vital and will stay valid for a long time. Like even the way he simplified like mouth shapes and fists and even the shading of masks and capes is just wonderful. So I'm always um, I'm always going to use and be inspired by his art. Um, so of course, I mean, I grew up in near Quebec City in Canada, so my first language is French. I was very exposed my whole childhood and afterwards, of course, to their own version, their own comic books, the bande dessinée, um, from France and Belgium mostly. Um, and I was just so into it. And there's sort of a language to it that's still resonates in my art, even if I don't try. It's just there, and it's hard to define because there's so many artists. It's not an artist in particular. I mean, there is probably a few, and I'll go through them, but I'll go through a few. But there's this sort of fun, loose. I don't even know how to describe it anymore. Especially, I'm so used to speaking French about these concepts or about these characters that it's hard for me to even express myself in English right now. Um, like the proportions, even the way a lot of them would draw feet like Peyo or Franquin. Um, I mean, Goscinny and Genry from Tom and Genry, Spirou. Um, like yeah, there's a roundness, and I called it like juicy, but there's something about it that is a juicy feel, like it's direct and fun at the same time. It's sincere. Um, I just I was always in love with it. So yeah, Spirou was my, even more than Asterix, I guess. Spirou was my go-to with, but especially the run. I mean, when I was growing up, they were coming out every few years from Tom and Jerry, and there was like sort of there was something to it. I love Franquin, the original, but there was something about the approach in that um, run from Tom and Jerry that was just so appealing to me. Um, Even yeah, you can see like that's the Spiro character that I'm just drawing from memory, honestly. But there was these sort of symbols. There's something about a certain time in European comic books or bande dessinée where um, you could. It's almost like those people who knew how to draw Garfield. Like there was a thing you could draw. There was a certain angle, the 3/4 angle that you would almost like learn to draw, or that came around in almost every page. That was so pleasing, and that they perfected, I would say, in that run of Spirou that I just loved. There was like this proportion, like big hands, big ears, big feet, but really thin limbs, and high waist, and very small body, huge head, very expressive. It was, to me, it was a style of its own. You could say the same for Asterix in some way, but there was sort of an appeal to me with, maybe it was the brushwork. I don't even know anymore, but the whole tone, I guess, and fun of the series um, was right up my alley when I was, from I guess 8 to now. um, that was very engaging to me, but especially I can't even remember the number anymore, but there was an issue called La Vallée des Bannis, which was really like I think it was 42, 40 something, 45, 40 something. That was sort of a throwback, almost. You could feel the Indiana Jones vibe and many other vibes, but if you can find it, it is wonderful. And now, what am I doing? Glen Keane. Let's erase this. What's going on? I'm losing my mind. Lane Keane. How can you forget? Yeah, Glenn. I mean, I briefly encountered Glenn when I started at Disney, but I was just so starstruck that I couldn't really engage and talk to him. And he left a few months after I was there, or maybe even a year. Um, but just through the years, especially in college, like going through pages and pages of photocopies that were passed around, and seeing Tarzan in theaters, um, and I mean anything he was ever involved in, The Beast. There was You could always tell when he animated something, and it was always a joy to find someone who would find, especially in animation school, who would find a copy or some uh, extra pages or rough animation or loose life drawings that were found somewhere from someone, and they were copied over and over. But somehow the work on Tarzan, because it was the the human body and the way he was drawing anatomy and simplifying it and stretching it and making it fun and Disney-like, but still Keane-like, it was just fantastic. And I still remember handouts about hands and feet that he drew for as references, model sheets, I guess, or reference model sheets for Tarzan, and How amazing. I'm just drawing them loosely. I know it's not exactly that. It was like that sort of monkey or gorilla hand like walking on the ground, and extension of the fingers, and but how they were just so wonderful, and how he gave life to every finger, and there was like power and force under everything. I guess there was something special about seeing that at a specific age in my, late teens, early 20s. That is still just part of my, I don't want to say vocabulary, but it's just inside me. And there's even in the set that I mentioned from Lane.Draws, there's a Glen Keane pen, but I can't quite use it myself, even though I love how it looks. But it looks like photocopies of his drawings. If you get what I'm saying, I think we're so used to seeing photocopies of his drawings that have been photocopied over and over from other photocopies that we're used to that line and look, but I'm sure that it wasn't like that exactly, but it's kind of fun to have. I just can't make myself draw with it. I can't. No one can. I guess I think Glenn should use it. I don't know. I can't do it. But I'm using this line, this brush called Smooth Pencil, Charcoal Pencil. So this is just me having fun, trying to find a loose shape here. When I don't know what I'm drawing, I often draw these big, tough guys that are kind of dumb. I don't know why. Because that's my inner norm or something. I don't know. But these seem to come out of me, these big, dumb characters. I just find them fun to draw and fun to pose. And I can sort of have fun with their proportions. And I love to draw like boxers and fighters and weightlifters and stuff like that. I love that very primal, basic expression of masculinity, I guess. I don't know if I'm revealing too much, but there's something very simple about it that I love and connect with in a primal way. And I love drawing these characters in almost in a more cartoony way, I guess, or in a pushed way. I remember years ago, um, the creator of Ren and Stimpy, John Quick-Falusi, had a website, not even a blog, or was it a blog, where he was drawing some of the original mixed martial art or UFC fighters from the first few years it was going on. And I just remember being amazed by how good that caricature were of these characters and how pushed he would push these, even more than I'm doing now, but these characters like Ken Shamrock and Tank Abbott and all these characters that if you're a fan of mixed martial arts of the UFC, you probably know already. But I just love drawing big, rough guys about to punch each other. There's something that just comes out. And I love doing it with that fat brush and big shading you can do. And again, that must be a crutch, but profiles and kind of a fake profile here, but just for the face. And I'm kind of tweaking a little bit by showing legs in the back and the other glove on the other side, but keeping that straight on profile for clarity. There's something so graphic about the profile that you can just kind of give a few lines and give some texture. I just love drawing body hair. To me, it's fun, and it's something you never see I mean, you barely see in cartoons, but there's something about drawing body hair on big males that sort of big dumb fighters like that's just appealing to me. This glove here, I don't think I drew it the right way. Should go the other way. I mean, his arm would be twisted more if it was the other way. Anyways, just simply, a little shade, simply. I'm not an overworker of these things. I know when to stop. I'm not good at details. I'm just good at evoking, expressing very simply. I know where what my limits are, and I just love how a rough drawing looks. Sometimes much more than something to finish. At least coming from me, I just have a hard time finishing properly. I just tend to mess it up. So being a story artist suits me just fine to never quite go into details that others love to add afterwards. That really do add up. I just can't do it myself. I just find myself finding all my weaknesses. So I just like even shading. I just choose one light source from the back or a rim light or something simple, and I don't go overboard with it. Again, more hair because why not? And I find it wonderful. Um, Body hair should come back. So here we go. I just love to. Whoop! What did I do here? All right. The gut too. I think I'm close to done here. I'm just going to shade a bit more, and that's just me. And that's no reference. I'm just trying to clarify a few things, a little bit of the, I don't want to overwork thing, but just clarifying. I don't know why I use the smudge tool. I should erase that and clarify that jaw a little bit. That's one thing I always pay attention to a bit more is the face and the area around it and the chin. I feel like that's where our eyes look at, especially the eye area, but that's where our eyes look at first, and the rest is sort of leading to it. I like to just put those fancy big strokes in the back to give it that artsy feeling. So let me indulge. It should be fatter. Or I should have done it before and then erase the body on top, but since I don't want to erase or overwork it, I'm just going to leave it be because this is just for fun. And here it is. I'm going to sign it real quick and move on. All right, so let's do another sketch or another drawing using the same tool, the charcoal pencil smooth from Lane.Draws charcoal master pack, I believe, for ProCreate, his brush set. Fantastic artist that I discovered through his brush set, honestly. So now I'm looking at his work and it's fantastic. So, when I'm not necessarily, I'm inspired, what inspires me the most, I guess, these days is spending so much time with my little boy that's just turned 2 months ago. And it's just wonderful to see the world through his eyes now and what he's exploring around the house. And it's very hard not to, I don't even use reference, I just love drawing this little boy now, and his stance and how he moves around the house, what he's trying to discover. And right now he has this fascination with trying to play and be friends with the cats. We have 2 black cats, and they're not too fond of him yet because he's a bit too rough right now. He hasn't learned completely how to pet them in a nice way, even though we keep telling him how. But it's coming, but he wants to play, and the cats, maybe they have fun, but they're sometimes perplexed by his energy and how much he wants to touch them and play with them. So they always go just a few inches away from being in contact. So it's fun to play with the contrast of the story between our cats and our son. So you see, like, I don't pay too much attention to or a ton of attention um, to anatomy. Like I love people who can do it. To me, I just love to just simplify it to a point where I have my own little way of doing it, and then I stretch it as much as I can. And I do it for the human form, and I do the same for animals like cats, especially dogs and birds. And um, I do love animals, but even with human anatomy, I reach a point where my brain melts, and I guess my brain just wants to play, and I just want to stretch things around like it's a cartoon, and that's where my interest lies. I guess is I do a lot of life drawing and gesture drawing to make my, I guess, drawing from imagination a bit more believable. I like when they have weight, and I like when there's a direction, and I want them to be slightly academic, but not really. So I do like when it shows it, some of my knowledge peeks through, but I don't want it to look too polished. So I never forget to just have fun and just try to convey something simply and stop where I need to. And even now, I think I'm going too far. Maybe I'll have to pull back. Let's see if that works. Because really, this is just sketching, but now I feel like it's taken over what's going on with the main character. I was trying to smudge it, but it doesn't smudge the way I want to. So let's just kind of erase with some opacity just to give it that light coming in. Because really, I just want the two figures, the two characters to stand out. Everything else can be a scribble, and that's just the way I like to approach things. Okay, let's do one more. Just trying a face here. It kind of, okay, I know where this is coming from probably. There's always something, nothing comes out of nowhere. Even though I said no reference early on, I mean, there's always some references in our heads. I've been watching the Ridley Scott produced and somewhat directed by him, Raised by Wolves on HBO Max, and I think it's great. Love his work. So drawing that mother character, I guess, or inspired by. I love that sort of really angular jaw that she had on the show, the short hair, sort of very basic android suit she has on. I'm just trying to simplify it for myself and is that a word? Cartoonize, kind of simplify find my own way of doing it. I feel like I've drawn the head way too big, but it's still fun. I'll keep it that way. So yeah, like as you can see, like I'm kind of sometimes when my mind is on autopilot, um, certain things come out, like the way I'll draw the hips and stuff is totally from life drawing and gesture drawing, and then it kind of comes out. That's sort of classic leg up coming in the front and the other one in the back, and that's sort of slight shade. That's on the underbelly. It just comes out, and it's always a mix. That's why I like when my studies sort of inform my other drawings, and the same when my, I guess, imagination or my symbols or cartoon side is influencing my life drawing, because I feel that's the whole point for me, is to connect the two in some ways. One I think should inform the other. trying my best here at trying the father or dad character, the other android. But now it's all wrong. I have to redraw this. I was going for a back pose and I switched. Let's do something else. I always find that a simple profile can be enhanced by just tilting the head a little bit or lowering it. There's so much that can be conveyed by just simplifying just a slight expression, like a head being more cautious, another one being tilted, like tilting another way, simple shading. I don't like to overwork anything. I just feel like I'm going to stiffen everything and it's going to feel like a homework if I work at it too much. I just like to, right now, to just have fun with it, so I'm going to end it real quick. Well, I guess this was just me thinking about that show, Raised by Wolves. Just thinking of it. So let's move on to something else. This was fun. Just like that brush a lot too. All right, so let's move on to something else. What am I gonna do? Just a head maybe looking up. Again, yes, this is my go-to profile, but I like to put a slight angle at the eye line to suggest a slight angle that now I'm going to fix. Yeah, I just like to, I guess that's what comes out of me, profiles, when I'm not quite sure where I'm going or what I'm doing. I find that even on these sketches, when I try to erase lines, that's not a good look. If I don't erase a good chunk and redo it, it just feels wrong. So I guess I'm just going to leave everything in as much as I can. Let's just start to play with that a bit more. Try to find those angles, chunks in the hair. That's something I like to do with hairstyles very broadly. Not that I know what I'm doing too much, but I like to separate the shapes of the hair in big chunks that I can then play as parts instead of just lines that fall down. I like chunks. Same with body parts. I like to just find those simple shapes. What should I do? Maybe she's sitting. It almost feels like a religious painting or something. I don't know. And I like to suggest clothing as well. Unless I'm looking at something, I just suggest drapery and folds much more than drawing something I've seen before. It's more about the look that this figure gives me, sort of contemplating the sky or the above. Maybe she's just sitting, trying to find these simple shapes. Just suggest a sitting position with some stuff tucked in, and I think I'm going to start winding down on this one. This is just for fun. It's just trying to find some angles. And again, I like to frame this in some semi-finished way. Adding some contrast. Trying to get that head and the light to be the main attraction. And everything else to sort of play as one big shape that leads to the head looking up. So that's what I'm always looking for, to really, that doesn't, maybe I'll go back on it. That didn't do what I wanted to. Just use the eraser maybe. Get that light feel to it. That'll work. Am I overdoing it? At that stage now, maybe I should have stopped. maybe maybe I can try to lead the eye a little bit more here. I think I've done too much. Okay. So let's wrap this up. This is just for fun, and now this one I feel like I'm overworking. So I'm just gonna smudge and hide the stuff that I don't want the eye to linger on, frame it, and then that's it, my friends. All right, so let's work and do more of a staging here. All right, I'm just trying to create some kind of pit or environment. All right, gap in the rocks where this big cyclops will come out of. I feel like I'm channeling my D&D or video game interests. Here we go. Isn't everyone now into video games and fantasy? It used to be not cool for me to draw these things, but now I guess it's okay. All right. I'm just trying to surprise myself too when I draw these shapes and characters, especially monsters and large creatures. I try to really challenge myself to push the shapes and the tension and the shoulders can be and hair, and really trying to push myself to simplify and push at the same time. All right, let's shade a little bit. I don't want to put details everywhere. To me, that ruins the point. I'm trying to create one area that has a bit more detail or interest, which is that face. And now I'm trying to take out details to play with the light a little bit. That comes from the top and back. And that kind of leads us to the face. So I'm creating a bit more details and contrast that are closer to the Cyclops face. Again, trying to lead the eyes towards what is interesting, those details. So here we go. All right, finishing up that arm. All right. I feel like I'm starting to overwork now, so let's maybe draw some effects, maybe some smoke, so I don't have to draw like as if the character's coming out of some kind of hot pit, or at least a mountainous area that has clouds. Maybe that will engage that scale idea. All right, let's play with that eraser to try to create some. Maybe it's too early to do this. Those hairs on the back. Okay. All right, now let's just push it in the back. Let's shade. So that character comes out of it, framing it a bit more. You got big shape coming out. I rarely go that dark, but since we're just having fun here, I'm just testing out the limits of the light and dark that I can push in this very simple loose piece. Okay. All right. I think now go back to using the eraser to play with the hair on his back. I think that's fun. It's always fun, that sort of little texture on top of a simple shape. I look for that. Not that I ever do that in storyboards, but when I'm just playing around with new brushes in ProCreate, that's something that brings me back to when I used to do more of that type of art for projects or on my own. But I would do those with charcoal and paper, and using my finger and pencils. Very messy, but now it seems like everything's possible with those digital brushes, which is fantastic. And there's ways to fix things very easily. I still try to work in a very analog way, even in storyboarding, but even for these, when I draw for fun like this, I try to barely use any layers unless I think this time I should. That's probably the one time I'm gonna do it, just because there's such scale, and if I mess this one up, it'd be much easier to fix. But usually I try to do it all on one layer so that I can work faster and loosely and with more confidence. Same thing I do with storyboarding. As much as I can, unless we're in a phase where there's a lot of fixing, I try to do as much as I can loosely on one layer, unless I'm moving a background around or I'm reusing something over and over. If I'm working loose, I try to use the least amount of layers so that I don't waste my time and I get to the point directly, since often when it's a first pass, a lot has to change or a new take needs to be done. So I like to work loose and get to the point as fast as I can. I'm getting close to it. I don't want to overwork this, but I'm just gonna maybe add a little bit of light here to draw the attention to that that cyclop a bit more, and maybe even go over it. But that little mark is there. It feels good to me with that kneaded eraser. And then I think that's going to be it for this one. All right, just playing around now, just drawing a face, female face, looking up, big smile. Love to play with that sort of look one way when a head tilt. It's kind of appealing to me. Have fun with that sort of big chunk of hair moving up. I really try to not overdo it. And that collar. Shading very loosely. Don't really know where I'm going with this, but I feel like just playing with some clothing, maybe, and then kind of a jacket. Just really kind of drawing and thinking and making it up. Maybe in the hands and pocket or side hip pocket, maybe. Would feel good. So let's do the same on the other side. Girl looking back her shoulder, looking behind, and having her hands in her jacket pocket, and having that sort of hip tilt, just loosely coming up with it right now. Very simply shading, giving some volume, and I think I'm just going to try to wrap this up. I just like drawing like this, just Just coming up with a fun little pose, some angles. I can see all the mistakes, but I'm just going to be okay with them and just move on because this is just having fun. Wish I'd planned this a bit more, but this is going to do. Maybe define that a bit more. Should I frame this? No. I think I'm going to leave it be and move on. All right. Okay, so let's just play around. All right, I was just watching an episode of The Boys season 2. I loved season 1. I'm still unsure about season 2. I think I'm going to get into it soon, but I did love season 1, so maybe I should pay more attention. But there's just this moment where, what's that character's name? Sunlight, I believe, or something like that. Starlight, has to hide something in her booth at some point that she's been asking for, and what's his name? A-Train, the sort of Flash character, the super fast character, kind of catches up and sees that she's put something in her boot, and it's not in a standing position, I think, but I was just kind of thinking about it, not really looking at the screen or even referencing it, but just thinking of a character being caught while she's putting something in her, I guess, leg boot or that fabric around her leg and just being caught. And I'm just trying to find, instead of a fun, crouching, gestury position, this is just me kind of, sometimes I just do that. I try to put characters in a position where might be more interesting, and sometimes it's just a test, but I'm just kind of playing around, trying to find something a bit more dynamic and with a bit more storytelling, especially since she has to put something in her leg. And this was all done through cuts on the show, and I sort of want to do it just as almost as an illustration where the character A-Train or the super fast Flash type character kind of shows up in a second or in a flash, really, and is sort of pointing at what he thinks he's suspicious of. Hey, did you put something in your booth? What are you hiding? Just playing with head tilts and just really loose everything. And I do like to draw characters playing against each other. There's always storytelling to be had here. It's a struggle, but it's really a good thing to try out. Characters playing off each other, and I'm kind of making stuff up. This doesn't work at all, so let's try something else where he's already in a sort of a commanding position with his stance. And I'm just really kind of drawing loosely. I'm just going for the interaction between the characters. I'm not overworking the pose. I'm just going for the fun of it. I'm just going to put some shading, just really quickly going for it. I just want to see that contrast with that finger that I did and her face a little bit, maybe in the shadow because she's hiding what she's doing, so maybe adding some shade around that side of her body where she's doing something suspicious, hiding that substance that shall not be named, spoiler alert. yeah, just trying to connect these things and keeping it cartoony and fun. And I know what I would fix if I was to redo it, but I love to see mistakes sometimes in my own drawings and just enjoy the looseness. So I think that's going to be it. Just putting these little cartoon lines for speed and finishing up. All right, this is me just, I guess now I'm feeling the inspiration from European comics or bande dessinée that I used to read as a kid and teenager. And that character, that Spirou character that I used to follow, and just the way that artist would be so exciting, create these sort of really exciting poses and situation, especially for that one arc, or I guess I call it an episode, but that issue called La Vallée des Bannis. I don't know what it would be in English. The Valley of the Dead, maybe, or the Valley of the Banished. There must be some kind of English version, but it's just him. It's a character that you often see in fun situations. He's like a reporter, and at this point is in this area of the world that's unknown, where he has to fend for himself, and his best friend has gone kind of crazy, Fantasio, and there's just some kind of this Indiana Jones vibe, that's sort of being in the wilderness, but like the Amazon or something. That's just breathtaking, at least in that issue. And just playing with the sort of machete or big blades. I think he makes one at some point in that issue, but I can't remember. I would have to reread it. It's all about survival and finding out the truth and making sure that his friend has not turned on him, but that it was all a big misunderstanding, because his friend has sort of became the not the enemy, but the one looming. Turns out, I think he's been poisoned, and he kind of went crazy or was hallucinating. It's that sort of adventurous but fun, cartoony feel that's I just keep wanting to re-explore, because it was done so well and it brings so much good memories. And if I was to, I'm really kind of imagining, it's not, that's kind of my own spin. That's not how Spiro really looks like. It's just my own spin on it. His hair would be going forward probably, but that's just me putting my own spin on that. So the very thin limbs or legs and the big feet, I just love drawing those. Kind of like in Asterix and Obelix as well. They kind of do that. Goscinny does that with his artwork. These big sort of sausage hands are big. Ratio-wise, they're way too big, but they're just so expressive. They know instinctively that the head and hands and feet are very expressive, and they leave the rest of the body a bit looser. So you keep that sort of kid-friendly look, but you can still put them in situations that feel dangerous. It's sort of that nice edge that I like, where there's high stakes to stories, but there's always a light, fun, adventurous tone. I mean, I guess things that are serious and bleak work in some ways, but I feel like with animation, there's still a spot that's like this nice spot to explore, to reach an audience that's slightly older and not lose the adults or the kids either, that I'm really into. And I hope we see more of it. So now I'm recalling even this kind of a waterfall entrance in the issue with this sort of skull and his friend character maybe looming in the back. I'm just kind of imagining the situation where they're connecting. I think they kind of connect that way in some ways in the story, but not like that. Just kind of creating this one-page sort of illustration that is my own spin, really. Still trying to find spots with the highest contrast, like the face and the mouth. I think we're done. Let's not overwork this. What am I doing here? I think I'm channeling. I talked earlier about Bruce Timm. This isn't necessarily a Bruce Timm style, but just sort of that energy that I remember seeing with the Robin character in some of the episodes. Especially, there's an episode in season, I think I'm misconstruing certain episodes, but there's two pieces of work in the Batman franchise, animated Batman franchise, that I keep on referencing and talking about. The first one is Batman Beyond: Return of the Joker. I think it's because at a certain point they started to use Japanese animation houses for some of the animation overseas, but at some point a few episodes were directed by Japanese directors, and that particular one, directed DVD, was just fantastic. And it was heavily influenced by one of my favorite animated film of all time. It made the biggest impact, Akira. So you can see it even in some of the effects. It's almost like an homage, like a giant beam at some point coming down and chasing down a character, being from the sky, a little bit like in a portion of the Akira film. But there's something they do while they animate young characters like Robin and Batgirl that feel like super cartoony, young and fun, and they kind of squash and stretch all the proportions from these characters, and it's super appealing. So I'm always looking for these fun, jumping silhouettes whenever I get a chance to draw those or think of those. I'm trying to draw a Batgirl, or my own version. This is just a thumbnail, really. This isn't really working with any references, just my own thought process and having fun. I should look at references, but I'm not, because I feel like session is just for fun, and this is just showing how I think. I'm always looking for these silhouettes or these shapes, especially when characters are jumping in the air. You have so much more freedom to make them do whatever you want and place the limbs where you want, especially considering that these characters are superheroes or beyond human in many ways with their abilities. So you can really have fun with the shapes. And I like the short capes character, like Batgirl and Robin. I should do a better job with the Robin character, but I'm not going to overwork this. This is almost kind of done for me. I'm just conveying feeling or a memory I had of those. The other episode I wanted to talk about in the Batman franchise was season 4, called Over the Edge, where you should check it out. Again, directed by a Japanese director, and it's just fantastic. Check it out. In terms of animation, timing, and just pure design and cuts, and I just love it. So season 4 of Batman Animated, called an episode called Over the Edge, where Commissioner Gordon basically goes after Bruce Wayne. He now knows that Batman is Bruce Wayne, and believes that his daughter, who's Batgirl, is no more. So it's sort of goes after Bruce Wayne, but it's just fantastic. So please check it out, and also the direct-to-DVD Batman Beyond, Return of the Joker. And again, just with this piece in particular, just playing with lighting that comes from the bottom, at least loosely, just to give that epic feel. Well, thank you everyone. It's been a pleasure to spend time with you, and see you next time.